Who is Saint Celestine? Saint Celestine is a legendary member of the Adepta Sororitas. Now a living saint, she has been described as a grand design of the Emperor unfulfilled. She has lived multiple lives in the Emperor's service, and each time she is slain, she is reborn once more. Little is known of her life and battles before she was proclaimed a living saint. Presumably they were suppressed. In her earliest known form, she was a citizen of Terra during the Horus Heresy. She was killed during the orbital bombardment of Terra during the siege of the Emperor's palace. In a later life, she was a sister Repentia of the Order of Our Martyred Lady, and that she was but one warrior fighting at the prolonged Palatine Schism. Against thousands of heretics, Celestine was thought to have been killed in a battle before the capital city of the planet Eurasian, and was said to have killed over 100 schematics before she fell. Her body was retrieved by her sisters and was found to have life still in it. Believed her touched by the Emperor himself, the sisters cleansed her body and found her to be free of wounds. The next day, the assault resumed with Celestine at its head. The battle lasted mere hours, and Celestine became the figurehead of the Palatine Crusade, leading the forces of the Imperium to countless victories. At last, the Crusade's commander, Lord Asgnar, wanted to assault the sector's capital world, but Celestine instead ventured to a backwater world called Sanctus Lys, which was home to an ancient shrine once visited by Saint Catherine. There she entered a hidden crypt alone, forbidding any present to follow. At the first sight of dawn, Celestine rose from the crypt changed, clad in the armor of Saint Catherine, and yielding an ardent blade. She had become a vessel of the Emperor's divine radiance. She was declared a living saint by Lord Asgard and his Thorian compatriots. Hailed as the Heimoriter of the Palatine Crusade, Saint Celestine led the warriors of the Imperium to victory in a multitude of wars of faith, dispatching tens of thousands of heretics and enemies of the Emperor. The Adeptus Sororitas venerated her, and her sisters would have followed her into the Eye of Terror had she asked them to. Saint Celestine was lost on Thorax as the treacherous Warmaster detonated an atomic failsafe on his fortress, annihilating everything for miles across. When news of her death reached Holy Terra, the Tower of Heroes told once to mourn her loss, but the Sororitas in their halls in the convent Priorsis were comforted with the thought that Celestine would be at the side of the Emperor. She appeared unexpectedly at a crucial moment of the Promethean War on Helatine, where the Order of the Ebon Chalice and the Salamander Space Marines were engaged with forces of Black Legion. There, she turned the tide against the Chaos Space Marines and drove a spearhead directly into the Demon Prince Lord Gralatix, and ultimately slew him. When the dust of the victory had settled, however, there was no sign of her. It remains unclear if this happened during her life or after she had been declared dead at Thorax. During the 13th Black Crusade, Saint Celestine once again manifested at the host of thousands of Sisters of Battle which had been thought lost in the warp for centuries. She proved decisive in the battle and became one of the key Imperial commanders, personally battling Abaddon the Despoiler. She resurrected two faithful canonists during the war, Ulanor and Genevieve, who became her champions known as the Gemini Superia. However, despite her best efforts, Cadia ultimately fell, and Celestine guided many of the survivors, including Belisarius Cawl, Inquisitor Gravax, and Marshal Marius Almlich, and to Calicis at the behest of the Psychic Vision. There, they found a webway portal and Eldar allies who saved them from the pursuing Black Legion. Saint Celestine continued to lead her survivors, now known simply as the Celestine, in a crusade to Makarich. There, Cawl, who was able to resurrect Rubut Golamin at Ultramar, was invaded by the Chaos forces. Afterwards, Celestine accompanied the reborn Primarch on the Terran Crusade and was one of the few to successfully reach Terra. Shortly after the Terran Crusade, Celestine became embroiled alongside Inquisitor Greyfax in attempts to Ecclesiarch Decius the 23rd to repeal the Decree Passive. Ultimately, after fighting on San Leor and Ophelia VII, The tyrant of Blue Flame revealed himself and his plan to use Celestine as a vessel to manifest into reality. As she became possessed, Longinus was forced to kill her. However, much to everyone's shock, she was instantly reborn, tracing the tyrant of Blue Flame's corruption back to the ecclesiarch. Celestine later slew him. Sometime later, on Tesidereke, Saint Celestine appeared to help the Imperial Fists and local army against a Chaos invasion. After a long battle against Chaos forces, the Saint entrusted the Psyker, who acted as an astropathic beacon on that planet, to Cassar of the Alpha Legion and prepared to fight against Karn. In the end, Celestine died at the hands of the Wolf of the World Eater. Celestine woke up in the dimension of the warp, on top of a huge mountain made of skulls, bones, and broken, rusted armors. All around her neck there was a deep scar that soon faded away, and Celestine had lost her memory. But she soon realized who she was, and that she was experiencing one of her many deaths. She walked in a nightmarish landscape full of demons and, facing various trials, regained her memory, armor, and sword. She found two other ladies who were revealed to be parts of her own soul, Faith and Duty, and a young girl who was her hope. After the trials, she was able to return once more to life. She appeared on the planet of Kofar, where she led the few available Austromilitarm forces against the War Engine, the leader of a blood cult of Khorne, that had taken control of the planet. However, while the campaign was successful, she was betrayed by an Inquisitor who fell under the sway of Khorne. The Inquisitor used his psychic powers to turn half the Imperial Guardsmen against Celestine. While the mutiny was defeated, Celestine was killed by a close-range Melta gunshot. Upon dying, she awoke once more atop the mountain of bones, with no memory of who she was. According to Saint Patricia, she was an angel, pure as righteous destruction. She laid low the twisted and lifted the hearts of the righteous. At her passing, 1,000,000 voices cried out her name. Shall we ever again see her like? No, not now, nor ever again.